going to be installing the HD-Link video interface unit for the Chevy Volt. I ordered this on eBay. It came from Hong Kong, arrived via DHL in about 2 days. And then this was one of the recommended cameras for its resolution and its wide viewing angle that I'll be using with this kit, installing it in the factory location for reverse cameras. I'll show you quickly what came in the kit for this HK3188. Came with a hole saw. If you use this hole saw to install in the factory OEM reverse camera location, it'll be a nice fit according to what other folks have done. I'll be using this for, at least in the beginning, until I get into the whole phone mirroring, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay mods, reverse camera. So mine didn't come with a reverse camera. Here it is. I just switched it into reverse. There it is, and it's got the steering wheel position CAN wire working properly. At first, when I connected everything up, this didn't change. When I went back and clipped that white wire that came with my third-party camera, this started working properly. And so the position for the steering wheel sensor was, I thought, a great little nifty little add-on. And I did go ahead and check that red line there at the base of the screen is as close as you want to get to the vehicle, and that's about, if anything on the ground is at that red line, that's about 2 inches from your bumper. So I didn't adjust that. Although if you hold the info button for 5 seconds, you can go in here and reposition those parking lines to your preferences if they're off for some reason or not, you know, in the right position or whatever. Oh, it looks like I need to be in park for that menu to come up, but if I hold the info button for 5 seconds, it will go into the configuration menu for the HD-Link. And if you go under here, under rear camera settings, parking assist lines, if you don't like those for some reason, you can turn those off. And just so you know, in the menu, it does not move those guidelines. You actually, to see those move, you do have to be in reverse and using it in the normal mode. But these positions right here will adjust, these lines is what that moves, up, down, left, right, and there's the adjustment for that. If you're using third-party navigation, you've got options for that here. I'm using OEM navigation, so I have that disabled in the dip switches. And then there's a few settings for your AV input if you're going to be using those. I have all that disabled because I have no secondary inputs. Right now this is serving only as a rear camera, reverse camera, without having to send off my head unit to be reprogrammed. This is the HD-Link was one of the few options, a little bit more expensive than that option. But with the extra capabilities like being able to route HDMI to this screen and to be able to pass the touch controls on from this screen to other connected devices, and you know, the fact that all of your OEM stuff still works, as well as, you know, using the stock factory, you know, using the factory touch buttons here, you know, per the user manual thing, you can actually control the HD-Link using your existing you know, infotainment controls. So that was the primary advantages why I went that route versus having this thing reprogrammed, because in addition to getting the reverse camera, and there's not really a delay either, it switches over to it pretty much right away. That's pretty fast. And you know, those guidelines right there, using the software, the steering wheel position on the CAN bus was, I thought, a great little addition. And the camera doesn't show up terribly well, but it actually looks pretty good. It's good color, good contrast, fairly high resolution. From what I've read, it is better resolution than even the OEM camera. Of course, there are limitations when you're routing video signals through CVBS RCA. You know, I think the maximum supported resolution is probably going to be 640 by 480. If it does go higher than that, I think you'll start have some loss in fidelity somewhere. But that's pretty good for a reverse camera at this screen size. I think we're doing all right, and it's here it is working. Here's the camera module. It's going to have the power receptacle, the CVB-S video cable there, more commonly known as RCA, and I believe, after reading the instructions, that if this camera is to be installed in the rear, you leave this wire uncut, which will provide parking guidelines on your video display. But if, like me, you're going to be using the HD Link video interface unit, it's got some pretty fancy features for the rear view parking guide graphics that are even tied into steering wheel position, which kind of take on that curve as you're backing up your projected vehicle path. So I'll be using the fancier versions of that, so I will likely clip and seal this wire right here. Basically, if you break the connection, the graphics for the reverse camera parking lines won't show up, and then you'll be free to use like the integrated ones options with that guy. In addition to the hole saw and the video assembly here, you kind of have an extended CVBS RCA video cable that I will be attempting to route from, in the bumper area here. Once I remove all this fascia, I'm going to attempt to route it through the center of the vehicle. Other folks have routed it through here and down through the trim down there on the step plate on the driver's side, and then through the driver floorboard kick plate area, and then up into behind the area of the radio, the center stack. But I'm going to attempt to route it as much of a direct straight shot as possible. I may run into issues with that, but so far as I'm seeing, there's some screws that might need to be removed, and if I can slide it under the carpet and get this thing to disappear, route the wire straight to it, I think this will be the most direct route, even if it does take a little bit more effort. Alright, there the HD Link is out of its shipping package and bubble wrap. It seemed to be adequately protected. A little bit of stress on the box, but I think she's going to be just fine. And this came with a variety of things, as you'll see, depending on where you purchase this thing, whether directly from the website, Amazon, or eBay. It may or may not show everything that comes inside of this box. That's why I'm showing it to you here. And as we get further along in the install process, you'll see in my particular application, that is the Chevy Volt, what all these connectors will be applied to. Now, I know they were designed to integrate with the OEM connector on the rear of the video so that it could tap in onto some of these I/O lines for various control functions, obviously for integration with video on the OEM screen. And then of course it uses the touch buttons that are built into the center stack to control this device here, so there's no additional install of buttons anywhere in your dash or the front of your vehicle. Alright, now if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be some video outputs, video inputs, I'm sorry. These are going to be some video inputs here. I don't have the full schematic in front of me. I have not yet reviewed it. I'm just checking to see that everything that I ordered came in the box. Couldn't tell you. Might be a mode switch button for this thing. A few more OEM integration connectors. Now some of these are going to be for the Chevy Cruze, the Chevy Malibu, and so forth and so on, so I don't know if I'll be using everything, but a GVIF extension board, micro USB, and of course it came with a complimentary HDMI cable, since you can actually route HDMI input video signals into this device, which will then display on your OEM screen there. I have the full PDF user manual of this thing downloaded, which I will probably be following a combination of its install guide as well as a nice install guide I found on the forum post. I'll be sure to credit the original author of that forum post, which is how I found out about this HD Link option for integrating with the Chevy Volt's OEM system for rear view cameras, navigation, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, so forth and so on, right? So it is the HD Link IW03GF. Shipped from Hong Kong, got here in literally like 2 days. I didn't even know that was possible. And so here's the unit itself. I will have to find room for this in an inconspicuous location in my center stack, but also somewhat accessible in case I want to play around with passing touch controls from the OEM screen to the connected device, which to do that will probably have to be Android. Although I have Apple and Android devices, and I will try to explore all the options on that account. Try to hook up people if I can excavate any valuable information. HDMI in, 5-volt USB power. I believe that, you know, can supply power to, say, like a Roku stick or a Chromecast, whatever it is that you want to run inside of your vehicle here. Navi-in is Navi-in, I think, is for third-party GPS navigation boxes that you can buy for vehicles that did not have integrated navigation. Power can. Alright, so then there's some modes, some touch input like we were talking about there. So that obviously, so that your touch controls can work with the user interface built into this guy here, and then a dip switch, which the installation and configuration user manual goes over all the settings for. Alright, I'm going to clean all this up, put it back in its boxes, and I'm going to get to removing panels in the car to install the reverse camera, the rear view camera, and route its video signal through the center of the vehicle. So I'm just kind of exploring the what needs to be removed, what needs to be accessed, flying by the seat of my pants here. I knew that these clips need to come off because I think that gives me access to getting, you know, these panels off one way or another here. I'm going to be lifting up the back cargo area here because there's some bolts there, in the 4 corners that need to be removed in order to lift up this plastic here, because I would not want to just route the wire right on top of here. It would be susceptible to chafing and rubbing, you know, if it's trapped in between this flip panel and the plastic surface here. So I'm going to try to remove that plastic. And I cannot tell exactly what holds on this right here, but you can kind of hear that there's something kind of clicked in there. This was just Velcro held onto the back of the seats there. The 4 bolts were 10mm, and it's not going to take much to remove them. There's not a whole lot of torque holding this thing down. I did use a deep dish socket because the lugs, the bolts that these nuts are on, are actually a lot taller, so deep dish, 10mm, remove all 4 of them. So this just lifts right out. So what I'm doing is, without losing any of my hardware there, I'm just kind of tipping this guy up to the side to show you that that whole plastic panel there just kind of tips out. That black and green wire are going to my inverter, which provide AC power to whatever components. And then the front section of this thing, that click you heard was this guy decoupling or deconnecting from the front of there. So that gets that out of the way and kind of gets me right up to that center console there. And it looks like routing underneath that might be a nice and simple. Alright, I removed this panel here for my 2013 Volt. It was just a bunch of clips. There was no screws or bolts to remove. You first basically had to lift back this rubber seal here and lift straight up on there to get all those clips to release. And then from there, there's a couple of clips out in the middle that you had to push the panel out to get pop. And that's what holds this panel in there, these style of metal compression fit clips. There. And then once you do have this off, you're going to have much better access to the fender where we're going to be routing the wires, in the bumper, I'm sorry, where we're going to be routing the wires up. And got to drill this hole out and feed the wires up through here. And then of course I'm going to feed them down through here or down through here in the well, come up and continue making my way forward once I get that hole saw out, drill it, and start routing wire. I'm next going to take what looks like these Torx screws out here and here from the
backseat center console. And that guy's fascia looks like it just meets up with here, and then of course I imagine that this storage center console for the front seats will remove, which gets me nearly all the way to the front end of the center stack there. And so far so good on routing through the center of the vehicle for the reverse camera. After those Torx screws are removed, the center console will just lift up. I've actually lifted it and rotated it 90 degrees. I didn't take it out of the vehicle or set it aside because it does have a wire that comes off of the main trunk line there that's coming up to power the receptacle here, and it can be disconnected, but it's not necessary. All I've got to do is just set this guy 90 degrees, and I've got plenty of clearance here to route my wires, and then I can put the whole thing back down and bolt it. I've moved on to looking at removing the center console here, just exploring, seeing what's holding it down, and so far it looks like we've got some bolts here that anchor this center console on. These bolts bolt to two tabs that are coming off of the floor's metal subfloor. They're just two tabs coming up that this guy is bolting into right there. So those two will need to be removed, and it may just rock out and disconnect. I'm just kind of working my way forward, trying to get up to the center stack. This I've already lifted off. You can actually just kind of get your fingers underneath it, and it lifts from the back end and disconnects from there. The only thing, just be careful of that wire. This is for the indicator lights for the where the drive selector is, right? So it's either just leave it connected and set her aside, but if you're going to set on it like me or try to break it or something, it might be safer just to disconnect it, set the whole thing aside, and then it looks like from there you've got bolt, right? And then that plastic panel up here should come off. More on that later. Still working right here so that I can get to that point, trying to see how this whole center console here comes off. Alright, the two bolts for the rear of the center storage console have been removed. So just kind of following my way up, and it looks like there's more to remove here. It's a 7mm, and it looks like the same 7mm fits for the clips for the upper fascia as well as the center console. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all four of those now. Again, that was a 7mm. So after you get the two bolts out here and the two rear of the center console, you will be removing the side panel here, and it should be the same for the passenger side, because once you remove that, you're going to find that there is another bolt hiding back here for the center console, and once that bolt is removed, then the whole center console here can the armrest center console section will be able to lift straight out once that bolt is removed. I advise just lifting this center console up far enough so that you can route the wire underneath it and pass it through. No need to really pull this all the way off, because you are going to have some connectors that come in here for the 12 volt outlet, the USB, and the audio, and you don't want to have to try to get under there and disconnect those. It's not worth it. Just once you get all the bolts lifted up, this does lift up and move around pretty freely, so it shouldn't be any trouble to route the wire under there. I'm using a 4-conductor wire that's grouped in a shielded cable. It's not quite auto-focusing, but what I'm doing is I'm pairing this cable that has 4 conductors in it. I think it's about 20 gauge, possibly 22 gauge wire. And what I'm doing is I'm still, even though I could route both of the video signals, both of the 2 connectors for the video signal and both of the connectors for the power to this reverse camera through the one gray cable, these are not shielded. And because these are not shielded, there is a small chance that interference would be on the reverse camera video display. So I'm also coupling it with the yellow CVBS
RCA video cable, and just gonna run this as a length of wire through to the back. Okay, and the cable has been routed through the center stack. Comes out through here, underneath this duct, and drops down in there for a ways. And then it kind of comes down in the corner back here towards the back end of the back compartment here, you know. And then it's going up under this insulative carpet. Comes up over here out of the insulative carpet, back into the bundle here. I've left all the excess because I did route some additional wiring in the event that I add any additional accessories in the back end of the vehicle. I'll have a few extra wires already routed up through the center of the vehicle that will be ready to go should I add some additional equipment, and I won't have to tear the whole vehicle apart and reroute new wires. I did drill the hole with the provided hole saw that came with the camera kit, and I used a tape measure. With these two tag lights here dropped out, I used a tape measure between the two knockouts for these tag lights to measure. Used masking tape and marked center with the masking tape. I did use a compound square against the back plane here, and the flat surface on the left side of the camera here to ensure that the lens was perpendicular, that the lens pointed perpendicular from the vehicle. That way it wasn't canted to the left or right or at an angle. And it looks like it's pretty centered. The head unit and the fascia and bezel retaining the head unit, as well as the 4 screws on these tabs, have been removed, and there is a tunnel where we can route the wires down that will come out through down here. And you can kind of see the light in this gap right here coming through a little bit, and then this area right back here is a nice open space to store the HD link. So the wires, according to the instructions that will be needed for my install, are all going to be routed through here, and the HD link will be stored down here. The panel for this just clips in. It's just a trim fascia down here in the side of the floorboard kick plate that just Alright, here's the first harness that has been routed down through here. It's the connector that goes into the HD link and the reverse camera in. Just routed right down through there.
Okay, so it's HD.
Next we'll route the GVIF connector. This part with the PCB here, the HDMI port, and the chip on it is going to stay up here close to the head unit, to the radio itself, because these wires here are short, and what we'll do is just route this flat HDMI cable down through the same area where we routed the first harness. There the HDMI connector is, routed down through here. So at this point, this is what we have coming down through the channel. We'll check the instructions and see what else, if anything, needs to be routed next. It's time to start integrating with the OEM head unit here, so that's going to include just plugging some of this stuff in for the input-output. That way the HD link can intercept the signals and the controls that it needs to intercept. So what we're going to do is these harnesses that have already been routed, we're going to start unplugging in the appropriate locations back here and plugging up the HD link connectors according to the connectors have been plugged up for the harness intercepts, and they've been plugged into the back of here. That included this connector being tapped into this one right here, and then this guy right here is going to be the control where the audio key high and the audio CAN key high and low are going to tap into some of these wires here. So we're just going to remove some of this harness insulative fabric tape here so that we have enough room to get the 3M tap connectors around these connector wires. Where the audio CAN high and low are going to be connecting into. You slip these 3M taps around there so your original wire does not have to be cut. There's going to be an end of the wire that has an open hole in it for the wire that you're tapping on. If you can see that empty hole right there, that's where we're going to be slipping in our blue wire, which is the audio CAN low, taps into the yellow wire for this harness. So what you do is you slip that blue wire in there, and then you close the clip, and that should give you we've got the 44 pin connector here, which we'll be tapping into for probably battery power. And then there's a green CAN wire. I might also tap into one of the black wires on here for ground. And we're just using a pair of scissors to trim the harness tape back. Just be careful not to cut any of the wires. 44 pin connector. There's a lot of wires that look green, so be careful to select the one that is not striped. And that will be your CAN. That will be your CAN, your software CAN here. That's going to tap into, or SW CAN. That's going to tap into the solid green wire here from the 44 pin connector. We did remove a bit of the insulation on this, the fabric tape on this harness right here to give us a little bit more slack to tap in with the 3M tap here. Alright, so here we are with this control connector which connects to the bezel. We've tapped in the audio CAN high and low for the HD link onto the yellow and light blue wire respectively. You want to bite really securely right in the center of these. Even after this clip latches, you still want to get a second bite with your pliers and squeeze down tightly right there to make sure that the metal guillotine inside gets a firm bite for electrical connectivity. At this point, you can reconnect all of your rear connectors and throw your bezel back in. Follow the instructions to set the dip switches in on this HD Link guy here. One thing I'm unsure about at this point is we've got a couple of different options here for the rear view camera as far as which one to plug it into. Now this is what I routed from the back of the vehicle myself from the third-party camera, and it had a male RCA connector on it, and the only female RCA connector was this guy here that said rear cam, which plugged in right here. Of course, I wasn't quite sure what to do with the male version of this rear cam guy here, so I may have this configuration wrong, but since it's a video signal only, it's not going to be carrying any high voltages or anything like that, so we're going to be fine just experimenting with the different ways of plugging this up and see what happens when I throw the vehicle in reverse and see if we get a video signal or not. Alright, I still haven't tucked everything away up into the cubby, the area that it's going to go in. Up there, just below this, there's a large space to store this thing in. But I did want to demo that before I put everything back together here. Still got some of the bezel pieces off and whatnot. Just want to demo really quickly the primary function I'll be using this for, at least in the beginning, until I get into the whole phone mirroring, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay mods, reverse camera. So mine didn't come with a reverse camera. Here it is. I just switched it into reverse. There it is, and it's got the steering wheel position CAN wire working properly. At first, when I connected everything up, this didn't change. When I went back and clipped that white wire that came with my third-party camera, this started working properly. And so the position for the steering wheel sensor was, I thought, a great little nifty little add-on. And I did go ahead and check that that red line there at the base of the screen is as close as you want to get to the vehicle, and that's about, if anything on the ground is at that red line, that's about 2 inches from your bumper. So I didn't adjust that. Although if you hold the info button for 5 seconds, you can go in here and reposition those parking lines to your preferences if they're off for some reason or not, you know, in the right position or whatever. Oh, it looks like I need to be in park for that menu to come up, but if I hold the info button for 5 seconds, it will go into the configuration menu for the HD Link. And if you go under here, under rear camera settings, parking assist lines, if you don't like those for some reason, you can turn those off. And just so you know, in the menu, it does not move those guidelines. You actually, to see those move, you do have to be in reverse and using it in the normal mode. But these positions right here will adjust, these lines is what that moves, up, down, left, right, and there's the adjustment for that. If you're using third-party navigation, you've got options for that here. I'm using OEM navigation, so I have that disabled in the dip switches. And And then there's a few settings for your AV input if you're going to be using those. I have all that disabled because I have no secondary inputs. Right now this is serving only as a rear camera, reverse camera, without having to send off my head unit to be reprogrammed. This is the HD Link was one of the few options, a little bit more expensive than that option. But with the extra capabilities like being able to route HDMI to this screen, and to be able to pass the touch controls on from this screen to other connected devices, and you know, the fact that all of your OEM stuff still works, as well as, you know, using the stock factory, you know, using the factory touch buttons here, you know, per the user manual thing, you can actually control the HD Link using your existing you know, infotainment controls. So that was the primary advantages why I went that route versus having this thing reprogrammed, because in addition to getting the reverse camera, and there's not really a delay either, it switches over to it pretty much right away. That's pretty fast. And you know, those guidelines right there, using the software, the steering wheel position on the CAN bus was, I thought, a great little addition. And the camera doesn't show up terribly well, but it actually looks pretty good. It's good color, good contrast, fairly high resolution. From what I've read, it is better resolution than even the OEM camera. Of course, there are limitations when you're routing video signals through CVBS RCA. You know, I think the maximum supported resolution is probably going to be 640 by 480. If it does go higher than that, I think you'll start have some loss in fidelity somewhere. But that's pretty good for a reverse camera at this screen size. I think we're doing all right, and it's here it is working. All right, folks, that's going to be it for this video. The rest of it is just going to be me reassembling the bezel here and reversing the process I did to install this thing. And then, of course, there's going to be me tucking up the wires and bundling all this up in a neat, sort of organized way. So that'll be it. Quick note on the install, to remove the reverse camera lines that come with that aftermarket third-party camera. This is the little white wire that was on the dongle, on the inline dongle that came with that reverse camera. You just cut that wire and separate it electrically. If you do that, you will be able to use the HD Link's rear parking guidelines, which are much better and have steering wheel controls for their position, and they kind of do that curve angle thing. And these are just static fixed lines, but according to the documentation that came with the camera, this wire was blue. On the actual camera it was white, but it's the only wire you can clip, and they made it accessible in the little harness here. So I actually had to just kind of release my plastic molding around the hatch here to re-access my bundle that goes to my rear camera. So you definitely want to clip that if you want to use HD Link's rear parking assist guidelines.